Hey guys, welcome in. It's finally here, the first game week of the Lincoln Riley era. I absolutely cannot wait for this season to start. This offseason has been nuts. We have never known less about a USC team going into the season, but honestly, that just adds to the intrigue. The offense should be high-powered and explosive, but I'm actually more intrigued by the defense. Not to say that the offense is a proven commodity already, I just have absolutely no idea what this defense is going to look like, especially early on in the season. So let's talk about this USC defense. If you watched any USC football last year, you know that the defense was absolutely a disaster. The Stanford game in particular really showed how flawed the defense was, and it just went downhill from there. When you look at the numbers, the two that really stand out are 89th in total defense and 104th on third down percentage. And honestly, those numbers were higher than I expected. I expected them to be really, really low. USC had a coaching problem as well as a personnel problem, and both of those have seemed to be addressed this offseason. Now, when a defense is that bad, I don't think you'll be able to completely fix it in 1 year, but a big improvement is expected and required if USC expects to compete in the Pac-12 this season. Now, as you can see by the graphic on the screen, the arrival and departure list is shocking. Defensive coordinator Alex Grinch absolutely attacked the transfer portal this offseason. The transfer class from a defensive perspective is really intriguing. Obviously, the transfer class led by linebacker Shane Lee from Alabama, as well as veteran defensive backs Bryson Shaw from Ohio State, Mekhi Blackman from Colorado, and Latrell McCutcheon from Oklahoma. Romello Height, the edge rusher from Auburn, looks to make an immediate impact as a starter, and Solomon Byrd, the edge rusher from Wyoming, looks to be a good rotational piece along the defensive line. You have a few big defensive tackles in there with Earl Barquette from TCU and Tyrone Taleni from Kansas State. Jacoby Covington, the defensive back from Washington, is also an underrated pickup. Coming from Washington as a defensive back, you know he's been coached well. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the field early this season. But in my opinion, the biggest pickup through the transfer portal for this defense is Eric Gentry, linebacker out of Arizona State. While he doesn't look like a linebacker, I think he's going to be a force for years to come. Having a 6'6", 200-pound missile in the middle of the defense is really, really intriguing. Any quarterbacks who haven't played against him before are going to be really thrown off by his insane reach. Every time USC has a scrimmage, he's the one people are talking about, and he's the one who's making plays on defense. It's unfortunate that Zion Branch suffered that knee injury because I think he was going to be a starter in the back end. But in terms of freshmen, everyone's going to look at Damani Jackson to make the biggest impact this season. I don't expect a ton from Damani this season. He needs to get healthy first of all, but he's a great talent nonetheless. Now, obviously, the most important of all the new arrivals is new defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. Now, the good news for USC fans is he is known for his quick turnarounds, notably at Washington State and Oklahoma. Both of those defenses took huge steps in Grinch's first year at those programs. Now, the question coming off that is how good does this USC defense have to be for them to reach their goals of winning the Pac-12 and potentially reaching the college football playoff? Those numbers I told you earlier being 89th in total defense and 104th in third down percentage, I think that if the total defense can come up to around 50th and third down percentage can come up to about 60th, I think they'll be in great shape. I don't think USC is going to face an offensive gauntlet of teams this season, so I don't think there's a need to have a top 10 defense. Honestly, I think the biggest key to this defense being successful is going to be takeaways. If the USC offense is as explosive as we think it's going to be, you want to get them the ball as many times as possible during the course of a game. Even if the defense is giving up 20 to 25 points a game, if they can get 1 to 2 takeaways a game, I think that'll balance it out perfectly. A great way to cause turnovers is by getting to the quarterback, and USC did a horrible job of that last season. The entire season, USC had 21 total sacks. Will Anderson, the superstar pass rusher at Alabama, had 17.5 just by himself. So obviously that sack number has to come way up. The pressure numbers were horrible last year as well, so the defensive line is going to have to perform much better than they did last year. So most of the time, we're going to see this defense line up in a 4-2-5, and this is what I think it's going to look like. On the defensive line, we got Nick Figueroa, Tuli Tuipulotu, Stanley Taufu, and Romello Height. Now, I would expect there to be a lot of rotation on the defensive line, primarily at edge. I'm looking for a huge year from Tuli, and I also think that Nick Figueroa is poised for a huge year as well. Now moving to the linebackers, we have Shane Lee and Eric Gentry. Now I think this is going to be one of the more exciting duos in the entire country at the linebacker position. I am so excited to see how Eric Gentry is used. I think he can be one of the best linebackers in the entire country. Now moving to the defensive backfield, we have Sierra Wright and Mekhi Blackman at the corners, Max Williams lining up at nickel, Xavier Alford and Kalen Bullock as the two safeties. Kalen Bullock was one of the very few bright spots on the USC defense last season. I think he's poised for a huge year, and I think he could be a Thorpe candidate come the end of the season. Just to talk about the cornerback room for a second, I think it's a very deep and athletic room. Guys like Prophet Brown, Damani Jackson come to mind. Latrell McCutcheon is also very interesting because he primarily played corner at Oklahoma, but he got a lot of reps at safety for USC in camp, so I'm intrigued how they use him as well. Now, my number one concern for this defense this season is the lack of depth at the edge position. Romello Height does not yet have a collegiate sack. Corey Foreman hasn't shown that he can reliably stay healthy yet. Solomon Byrd was a solid player at the Mountain West level, and Julian Simon, the linebacker who made the move over to edge, isn't big enough to play the position, and I don't know what they're doing with him. Now, of course, the wild card for this entire defense is Corey Foreman. If he plays up to his potential this season, this is an entirely different conversation we're having about this defense. He has all the talent and athleticism in the world, and if he can put it together, he will be an absolute weapon for this defense. I'm pretty confident in the offense this season to produce and score points, so I think that the ceiling of the team this season will be determined by the defense. I think USC's offensive talent alone is enough to make them contenders in the Pac-12, but if they want to take that next step and win the conference and possibly get their first playoff berth, the defense has to step up, play well, and take the ball away. So who are you most excited to see on this defense this season? What are you worried about? Tell me down in the comments. Or if you're just an angry Oklahoma fan who wants to tell me off and write boomer, go on ahead. My comments are open to everybody. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.